Hi BookTube, I am at the cricket today, and so you are getting a tag video. Yep, today I am doing the Would You Rather tag, and that was a tag created by Kat at Curious Cat, and I was tagged by Ellen at Ellen Made Book Club. Thank you, Ellen, because I loved these questions. They really, I didn't find them easy to answer. I didn't quickly come to I'll take this. I had to really think, and I enjoyed that very much. So let's hit these questions. Question 1 says, would I rather never read more than one book from the same author, and that means no rereading either, or read only books from one author of your choice? Okay, maybe this wasn't such a hard question for me, because this question seems almost to have thought of me in advance, because as you know, it's really rare for me to read more than one book by the same author. I love to skip and hop all over the place, jump from in and out of genres. The bigger the jump, the better sometimes. So I'm going to choose the first one. Never read more than one book by the same author. I'm not saying that won't be hard in places. There are some authors, James Baldwin just came to the top of my head, Toni Morrison, Margaret Atwood. Wow, I'm sure others would come to my mind if I weren't on camera, where I would love to read more than one book by them, at least 2 or 3, just because they are such good writers. But okay, this is a tag about making a difficult choice, so I've made it. There we go. Question 2 was, would I rather read a book with an unlikable main character or have my favorite character die? Okay, neither of these options sounded either attractive or wholly unattractive. I spent a long time going, I don't know. Unlikable characters, it seems to me, are usually misunderstood, or that's how fiction tends to handle them. Sometimes they misunderstand themselves, and that is their biggest problem. And it is cathartic to lose a character that you love. It's like a taster sample of grief. And although it's painful, I always think it's good to go through it and come through and go, oh, wow, you can go through a thing like that. And so though I hate to admit it, I do enjoy the process of mourning the death of a character that I've loved. Question 3 asks me, would I prefer to start my library from scratch? And it means that I can't rebuy any of the books that were on my shelves before, or never be allowed to add a new book to my current library. Ooh. Well, I came down in the end to start from scratch, even though the downer would be losing a lot of nonfiction, some of which I haven't read, some of which I would want the ability to go and reread. So, okay, that's what I would lose, but not the end of the world. I mean, if you're starting from scratch, you would buy completely different books. And I'm excited about that idea. I think, oh yeah, but then I could go buy books and maybe have some freedom, because I wouldn't be thinking, oh, my messy, overcrowded shelves, what am I going to do about them? That's my problem now. If I didn't have that problem, who knows what I would do in bookstores? It would be terrible. Question 4 asks, would I rather that my favorite author never published anything new, or only published bad books from now on? See, okay, that question was also a little bit kind to me, since I'm more likely to read only 1, maybe 2 books by the same author. It's really easy for me to pick the ones that have critically gotten more acclaim and not worry about the rest. That's really quite easy, because let's face it, even limiting myself to 1 book per author, I will never live long enough to read all the books by all the authors that I want to read. Question 5, would I rather read only one of my favorite genre, or read as widely as I want, except in that one favorite genre? Okay, again, see, I thought these questions were hard, but now that I'm reading them out to you, I'm going, actually, a lot of these questions had me in mind already, I think. I don't know how the creator managed that. We don't know each other. But there again, you see, what you should say to me is this: if I could only read one genre, which one would I pick? That would be really, really tough for me. And I would try to wriggle out by saying literary fiction, please, knowing full well that literary fiction writers get away with writing crime and fantasy, science fiction, horror, the whole gamut, romance, everything, and yet they fall under one umbrella genre. That's not really fair. This is going off topic, but I've sometimes wondered, would it be better if we just kind of threw out all the genre labels and just divided books into two categories, like those where the writer hopes that you'll just be entertained, and those where the writer is hoping that people will analyze the book, that academics will write about it. What if we just did that and said, these books are just entertaining, so they're lightweight, you don't have to worry about, oh, what's going on here. These books, a little tougher, never mind about the genre. I don't know. But even those two categories, see, they wouldn't be mutually exclusive, would they? There are literary novels that grab and hold the imagination, and there are pulp novels that are being studied in universities. So maybe it's better to just leave things as they are, right? Okay, question 6 says, would I rather be stranded forever on a deserted island with a full library? I don't know what that means. I hope that means my definition, which means virtually endless, or still live in society, but books have disappeared. Are there readers who chose the second option? I mean, I'm just curious. Did you? How would you stand it? How would you cope? That is my worst nightmare, to live in a society where nobody reads and nobody thinks that's a problem. Yeah, that'd be too tough. So I'd have to do the deserted island, lonely though that would be, and cut off though that would be. I think I'd have to adopt something as a pet, a lizard or a seagull or a stick insect or something, and try to get by with that companionship. Question 7 specifically aims at science fiction and fantasy, and it says, would I rather read only 5+ book series, but they're unfinished, oh, okay, or read only thick standalones with a bunch of info dumping? Okay. I in the end, because I really prevaricated, in the end I said thick standalones. Info dumping, yeah, it's a writing fault, okay, but I can forgive it sometimes, depending on how the information is presented and how interesting it is. I experienced that while I was reading The Dante Club by Matthew Pearl, and it was probably the only thing I didn't complain about. Question 8 is about mystery, and it says, would I rather always get book twists spoiled, or they all have an open ending, and then it says / the killer isn't caught? I am going to go with open endings, which can happen even if the killer is caught, as in The Red Lamp by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. That's a good example. You know who did all the killing, but you cannot be sure if paranormal influences helped identify the culprit or no. So I thought spoilers, they don't always bother me. I still like to see how a book does its plot events, because depending on how they do them, they can be really well done or not so well done. So I choose that. We'll get some plot twists spoiled, but I need to have some open endings. I don't like everything all closed and tidy all the time. I get bored. Question 9 deals specifically with historical romance, and it's asking me, would I rather have a great love story with historical inaccuracies, or a toxic or meh love story but a great historical world building? Okay, all relationships should have something a bit wrong with them, otherwise they're not real. They've got to have bad patches or something. To me, a really amazing love story is always a fantasy. And sometimes I like a bit of fantasy, sometimes I like those kind of romances, but it really is a now and again sort of taste. I don't mind reading a mixture of fantasy with history, but, okay, if I know something about a historical setting and the author gets something factually wrong, or worse, they get more than one thing wrong, those are the toughest books to read and the ones I'm most tempted to not finish. And question 10, okay, I'll just read it as it stands. Question 10 says, would you rather read a book that has the best characters, plot, writing, you can only choose one, but none of the others? Now, forgive me, everybody. I don't believe you can have a book with good characters or good plotting if the writing is bad. The business of writing, characters are made up of writing, plot is made up of writing. There is no other way to construct them. So they don't exist before the words go down on the page. So to my mind, there is only a choice between plot or character. That is, if you have a very plot-driven novel, you must allow a certain sacrificing of depth in characters. Depends on the book. Some do a little bit more than others, but the really pacey ones that we all love, those paperbacks that you can buy at grocery stores and read at the beach, the idea is you want a really cracking, pacey story, and the characters can actually be a little bit stereotypical and you probably run with them. Or, on the other hand, you can have character-driven novels where you do go into depth, but that can slow things down, or the events that happen in the story can be quite ordinary, as they might be in real life. I always favor character-driven over plot-driven. I love plot-driven novels. I love mysteries and thrillers where everything is tight and moving at an incredible pace, but I can't read a lot of them in sequence. As soon as I read a plot-driven novel, although I enjoy it, I almost always have to move away from it for a while and then come back. So more of the books I read tend to lean toward being character-driven than plot-driven, so I've got to go with that. And question 11 asks me, would I rather have a friend who loses my books, okay, or mistreats them, stains them, breaks the spine? Would this mean like every single book? That is, are we saying that I have a friend that every time I lend them a book, that's the last time either of us ever see the book again? I mean, I would feel justified after 3 losses like that to say to them, I'm not really willing to lend them more books. I think that would solve the loss of books problem. Mistreatment, see, that's a more complicated question. That depends on what we're talking about. Most of my books are secondhand, and they aren't valuable. They already are a bit beaten up. That's how I like them when I buy them. I often will look for condition that's only fair or good rather than very good or excellent. I'm not interested in the book being in amazing condition. So oddly enough, though, I think I wouldn't mind if I let a friend borrow a book and then they annotated it. That's not mistreating it in a sense, but I don't know why it would bother me for them to treat the book that way, because that's treating it as though they own it when in fact they're not, they borrowed it. So I guess that would bother me a little bit. So I would say I'd rather have a friend who loses books, because they wouldn't need to lose very many before I would say to them, look, I'm really sorry, I just don't feel comfortable lending to you anymore, because the ones I have lent you, you have lost. Simple as. Question 12 asks, would I rather never be allowed to visit a bookstore again, or be banned from all the libraries in the world? Okay, this was an interesting question. Where I live right now, I have to travel a fair distance to reach a large bookstore, okay? One with a really good selection of books. The train for an hour will get me to London, and that's probably the shortest journey, because by car, the bigger bookstores are a greater distance away. Northamptonshire is not known as an intellectual sort of county. I have to travel to Cambridge, to the university town. That's more than an hour by car. There isn't an easy way to take public transport there. So, there's all these different options, but they all take a little bit of time. Libraries, on the other hand, I have much greater access to libraries. So I came down in favor of libraries, because I'm also worried about the threat of closure, which continues to exist even for libraries. Ours locally is run by volunteers, but there's always that sort of threat hanging over them that the council will just get tired of the expense that they still do have to keep the building up. They have to provide some things, even if it's volunteer run. So there's always that danger. So using libraries becomes a really big deal to me. So I wouldn't want to be banned from libraries or stop using libraries. Now, I think I'm going to choose the first one, never be allowed to visit a bookstore again, which must sound like, seriously, how could you choose that? Well, because I think this question has a get-out clause, right? It doesn't say that I can't buy books from charity shops, right? Which sell a lot of things, including books. They're not strictly bookstores. It doesn't say that I can't buy books from car boot sales. It doesn't say that I can't buy books online, okay? Or in market stalls, or if you're Joseph Francis Burton, you go to the back of the bookstore where there is a dumpster and you get your books from there. It doesn't say I can't do that. I've never found the right kind of dumpster, but if I ever do, believe me, I'm going to go checking it out, because I didn't realize what treasures could be discovered there. So I think question 12 gives me an out, and it'd be better to choose, no, I want to be able to enter as many libraries as I can, because I want those to remain open. I want libraries to continue to be in abundance as much as possible. And I'd be willing to give up bookstores because I think there are so many other ways of acquiring books besides that specialist street shop called a bookstore. I think there's many, many other ways to acquire books now. Question 13, another killer that took me a long time to decide. It says, would you rather that everyone hates your favorite books or everyone loves the books you hate? Well, either way, the world would be a pretty bad place, I think. The only books that I ever react to with hate would be books that teach other people how to hate. That's probably it. Above that, I'm pretty good. I can tolerate quite a bit. If everyone hated my favorite books, that might be some improvement because, my favorites are always changing. And the world is always a better place when people are able to change their minds. So I'm going to choose everyone hates my favorite books. Question 14. It was another toughie. Would I rather only listen to audiobooks, and that's not enough. It says only listen to audiobooks narrated by the worst narrator, okay? Or read physical books in terrible lighting, okay? If I ever lose the ability to read text on a page, I will listen to audiobooks. Yes, I won't turn them down. I'll listen to them in quantity. But until that happens, I really do need the specific kind of brain stimulation that comes from looking at text on a page and decoding it. I'm so sorry, but listening to audiobooks does not fire off the same parts of my brain. And so I find that my mind goes wandering with audiobooks. I cannot keep it focused. And I think that's because it doesn't have enough to do when it's just listening to somebody read a book to me. So, it goes and looks for stimulation somewhere else. However, I am very fussy. When I do listen to audiobooks, the narrator matters. Oh yeah. LibriVox. Everybody remember good old LibriVox? I think it's still around. For a short time, I tried LibriVox. I did find one book I enjoyed, and that was a reading of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. That was very good. But I rejected almost every other book I started listening to because the delivery style, the vocal quality of the reader was just, I couldn't deal with it. I'm very, very fussy about vocal quality. Matters to me a lot. Whereas when it comes to lighting, I often imagine trying to read a Victorian novel by candlelight just to get in the spirit of the times. And I have read lots of books in very poor light and managed. So I think that's what I do. Question 15 says, would I rather own books from the same series/collection that don't match, or read books printed in a tiny font? Okay, well, matching. None of my books. If I don't even have a series of books, but if I did, I wouldn't care if they matched or not. That's irrelevant to me. Books by the same author, I get them from all over the place. Matching. It doesn't have meaning, doesn't spark any emotion in me one way or another. So that's never going to feel like a real loss. Read books printed in tiny font. Well, I'm getting to that age. I can still read very small print if I take these glasses off, no problem. But how long will that last? Eventually, it comes to us all. There will probably be a time when tiny print will drive me absolutely crazy. So when that comes, I better choose, to have any size of font I want now before the problem starts. And question 16, the last question, is a toughie as well. Yeah. Would I rather never post another YouTube video? Okay. Or never watch YouTube ever again? Ooh, okay. It took me a while again with this one. Finally came down to saying, no, I would never post another YouTube video. I'll tell you why. Because there are other platforms for this kind of content. They're not as popular, okay? But I would prefer not to lose the YouTube content that I'm already viewing. I've learned so much, and I've grown this enormous book wish list, which is all down to you creators out there. Definitely. And yeah, I suppose the people that I would miss then would be those who comment on my videos who don't make their own content. I'd try to invite you over to the other platform So I'd probably make an announcement video saying, guys, I can't be on YouTube anymore because I agreed to this question in the tag. And so I'm going to go and I can't remember the names of these other platforms, but they exist. I'd probably go there, make my content and just tell people, look, come on over, watch me on this other channel. But I wouldn't want to lose my YouTube subscriptions. I like so many of them and they're so fun to watch. They accompany me when I'm riding on my exercise bike. I watch your videos, makes commenting a bit hard. Also make commenting hard if I watch videos when I bake bread and my hands are all covered in dough, so you guys probably don't get as many likes and comments as you should, but I'm there, I'm watching, and I watch videos all the way through as much as possible. So hopefully that helps. Right. Got to tag some people. Well, Joseph Francis Burton, have a go. I can imagine this one, you're gonna have fun with the questions on some of these, I think. After that, check out the list in the description box. I'm going to put some more names in there. That was fun. Thank you very much for tagging me, Ellen. That was a lot of fun. Okay, gonna keep watching cricket now, wherever I really am. And you all enjoy yourself. I hope you're doing well with your reading. I'll be reading, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a few days' time. Take care. Bye-bye.